Welcome back to another edition of Songs of the Ozarks, a project of the Ozark Studies Institute, an ongoing initiative of the Missouri State University Libraries. My name is Emalee Flatness, and today's date is April 11th, 2023, and I am here with our special guests, Chris Brashear and Joe Newberry. Thank you guys so much for meeting with me today.
Thank you for having us.
And we're meeting here in the Ozarks Room at Missouri State University.
That's fitting.
It is fitting. So, would you all mind playing a song to start us out today?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd be happy to do it. That's called One for Possum.
Wow. That was just wonderful.
Chris wrote that.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did.
And what an Ozarkian title. So, what genre would you all identify with as a duo?
I would say, old-time music, traditional music is what we've, grew up with and heard and still is part of our musical kind of palette.
Right.
So.
And you are both from the Ozarks. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Ozark, down here, right down I-65 here, and when I was a kid growing up, we had a place called the Shack on Town Square in Ozark. And the Woods family, Emmanuel Woods, was he was the fiddler that really kind of was there dependably every Saturday night. Didn't matter what time of year, what kind of weather or anything, they were there. Rex and Ray and Emmanuel. And Art Galbraith showed up there sometimes, so I knew Art a little bit growing up in Gordon. So yeah, I heard, fiddle tunes and kind of the community of people that would show up on a Saturday night. That was something I definitely participated in some, and what else? Gosh, all my family's really from McDonald County, Missouri, though.
Really?
And so I heard about Vance Randolph pretty early on because he did some of his early field, collections down in Pineville and Anderson and Knoll and all around McDonald County. I heard about Albert E. Brumley pretty early on, who was from down around there as well. So I don't know. I'm pretty deep Ozarkian roots, I would say.
Did you grow up with gospel music too?
Well, yeah. I grew up in a Baptist church. My mother was a church pianist from the time she was 11 years old until she passed away. So, I had a lot of, I got a pretty good taste of the Baptist hymnal.
Did you have other relatives besides your mother who played?
My dad was a really good singer.
Really?
And he played a little guitar. He was not he was not one to really be in jams that much, but he was a really good singer. He was a good tenor singer. He could sing harmonies. I mean, he had musicality. I just think he just never really got to be interested in playing instruments that much, but he loved it, and he loved, you know, Doc Watson, and he loved, he liked, you know, Ozark folklore. He got into folklore in general, in fact, and so I think, you know, he was really the person more that wanted to go out and hear people play with me. We would go out a lot. My mom didn't always go out, but she was definitely the musician.
What about you, Joe?
My dad's from Springfield. My mother was from West Plains. And I grew up in the Boot Heel, but spent summers here on the farm in Stratford, Missouri.
Really?
Yeah, right out Division Street. And I come from a singing family. My grandfather was a hunting and fishing companion of Vance Randolph.
Wow.
And my dad went to high school with Max Hunter, and so I remember my dad was one of those dads that he'd say, "Get in the car." So I'd get in the car, and one day he told me that I was a little boy, and he said, I said, "Where are we going, Dad?" He said, "We're going to meet a great man, son." And we went to a nursing home down near Fayetteville, Arkansas, and Mr. Randolph was there.
Really?
And Mr. Randolph, he was a little bit fuzzy on things, and he thought that my dad was my grandfather, and my dad did not correct him. He just answered as, instead of Jim Newberry, which was his name, he answered as Sterling Newberry, which was my grandfather. Dad just let him think that it was my grandfather. So anyway, I grew up singing. I grew up singing the old Ozark songs and newer songs, and then I started playing music seriously when I was a teenager.
Really? What instrument did you begin on?
I began on guitar to accompany my family's songs, and then when I was 15 years old, I was at the Boone County Fair, and I was doing everything that a 15-year-old does at the Boone County Fair. The midway, looking at girls eating cotton candy, shooting the guns at the little the knocking the ducks over.
Right.
And I heard fiddle music, and I literally pivoted, and I walked into the tent where the Boone County Fiddle Contest was being held, and into my future.
Wow.
And on stage were all of my future heroes. That was the first time I ever saw Taylor McBain and Pete McMahon and Gene Wells and Jake Hockemeyer.
Wow. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So when did you start picking up the banjo?
Well, I lived at a coffee house. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, I just lived at that coffee house." I lived at a coffee house and was one of the student managers, and that's where I took up banjo. I remember asking Art Galbraith one time, I said, "Mr. Galbraith, what kind of banjo playing do you like?" And he said, "Quiet." And so, but I learned old-time banjo there in Columbia, Missouri, and then I went out to visit a friend of mine when I was in my early 20s out to North Carolina, and my car broke down, and I stayed. And a banjo was much more popular in North Carolina.
Really?
And I've been there ever since. But somebody said, "Well, do you play Ozark music?" It's like, I play the music that I grew up with. It informs everything, and that's one of the joys of doing this collaboration with Chris, is that Ozark's music informs everything we do.
Right.
And so, in a sense, everything we play is Ozark's. It might not be an Ozark tune, but it certainly, we run it through our filter, and that filter was born right here.
It makes it become an Ozarks tune. So tell me a little bit about Max Hunter, who he was.
Yeah, well, so I actually did have a chance to get to know Max a little bit when I was, I was a teenager. I was probably maybe 12, 13, right in there, and actually in Ozark, there was my track coach Mike Howell, and his wife was Chris Ann Parker, and they were running around with Max learning songs. So I got sort of brought along in that. So went down to Eureka Springs with Max, and so I was he had Max was around quite a bit then playing too. You even see him on TV sometimes. And little Ozark programs or something. But for people who don't know Max Hunter, he was a song collector. He was a student of Vance Randolph's and Mary Celestia Parler and people that had been collecting Ozark folk songs for a long time. And Max has a wonderful collection. He was a good singer himself, and so he's pretty influential.
And then tell me a little bit about your relationship with Max as well.
Well, my dad went to high school with him, and Dad would bring home Max's books. I never met Max.
Really?
I did not. It's one of the. It is one of the regrets of so far along life is that I didn't get the chance to hang with him.
Yeah, I found that very interesting that you both had little connections with such a big influence.
Yeah,
in Ozarks tradition.
My dad went to some high school reunion, and I remember him coming home and saying, "Well, I saw somebody that you'd like." And I said, "Who's that?" Max Hunter. He knew Mr. Randolph, and he studied under Mr. Randolph. It's pretty cool.
Wow. Backpedaling a little bit, does anything that was said in your meeting with Mr. Randolph really stick with you?
The only thing that I remember from Mr. Randolph is, "Oh, Sterling, oh, Sterling, we had some good time, didn't we?"
That's pretty special.
I wish that Vance had recorded and documented my grandfather.
Really?
There were some behind the scenes jockeying about who was the best singer or who should be collected, and so grandfather never got collected.
Oh man.
That's all right. That's all right.
So tell me a little bit about how you all kind of transitioned into what you're doing today, because you both play music sort of for a living. Is that correct?
Well, actually, I've always been I would call myself a journeyman musician.
Really?
I'm a veterinarian, so I have another career. But I've played all my life, and I have played, variously professionally and in different contexts. So yeah, I mean, I like a lot of different music, and it just happens that I've really wanted to dig deeper, into because the Ozarks material, just because as the decades go by, you start to also feel more responsible to the tradition in a way, because you knew people, or you saw certain things, and you didn't really maybe think so much about it then, but down the road you do.
Yeah.
So that's how this sort of, and I got a call, a few years ago when they were talking about the Smithsonian project, about the regional emphasis on the Ozarks, and I got a call from Barry Burgee, who was the emeritus director of the National Endowment for the Arts, and Barry's a Missourian, and he was a student of my dad's.
No kidding.
And back when I was growing up, Barry was at Washington University, and kind of heading up their folk program there, and there was an organization called the Missouri Friends of the Folk Arts that was going around and doing field recordings, and they came down to Ozark and they recorded Emmanuel, and then we're going around other areas in the Ozarks, and that recording is a pretty influential recording. It's called "I'm Old But I'm Awfully Tough," and it's one you should definitely check that one out, Emily. That needs to go in your collection.
Yes.
So anyway, I think again, as time goes by, you really feel more like you have something to share about that.
Mm.
So
I had a career for a long time. I was one of those guys who would fly out on Thursday night, fly to a festival or a gig, play as hard as I could until Sunday night, and then come home.
Mm.
And one of those gigs that I started doing a lot, Garrison Keillor liked my singing, and so I was a very frequent guest on a Prairie Home Companion.
Wow.
And so, probably 2015, Garrison did a solo show, and I went and played and sang with him on the solo show near where I live in North Carolina. And we had dinner afterward, and Garrison said, "Do you want to do this music all the time?" I said, I think I do. And he said something very Garrison-like. He said, "You should do it now. You've got a great future behind you."
Mm.
And I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so about a year later, I got an email from Jerry Douglas and Aly Bain inviting me to be a featured singer on the Transatlantic Sessions tour of the UK. And so I took the plunge, and that's been 7 years ago, and I've been a full-time musician ever since.
Wow.
but he won't be able to stick around with me very long because we don't do that much money.
Well, we've been enjoying this so much that I think that there's going to be more opportunities, and we're going to try and make more opportunities. And Chris plays with Peter McLaughlin a lot out west, and I play with mandolin player Mike Compton, and I play with a fiddler named April Verch. And so between all of these people, we should be able to scare up some sort of foursome, maybe bring our friend Jim Watson in to play bass.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that
We're
would be
always
fantastic.
scheming,
We're always
Right.
well, you know, we are the sharks. We swim or we sink.
Musicians reinvent themselves all the time.
Right. Would you mind singing one?
Sure.
Sure. What
A
would you
little
like to,
bit?
you want to sing?
We can do that Jimmy Driftwood
do that.
song, and then,
Oh,
then
that'd
do
be
one
fantastic.
then do one of yours. Yeah, when I was a kid, I started going down to Mountain View.
Oh my word. Did you find a difference between playing where you were from in Mountain View?
It was the culture was so strong that it was intoxicating, and like every other person, you know, I think people in Illinois, they've got to go to Chicago. People in the Northeast, they've got to spend some time in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Mountain View and was like, okay, I've got to get down. So I moved down there and played music for a while.
Did you really?
I did. I lived outside of Mountain View and would play at the Ozark Folk Center.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. But there, Jimmy Driftwood was, you know, he did of course, wrote the Battle of New Orleans.
Yes.
But he wrote thousands of songs.
Really?
And this is one of my favorites that he wrote.
Really?
Cowboy.
The Cowboy. Song of the Cowboys. A cowboy's life is a very hard life, fighting the wind and the cold. I would not trade my cow-punching days for all of old Midas's gold. There's horses to break and broncs to fight and blizzards that'll make you turn pale. There's plenty of fun for the son of a gun who can sing and be gay on the trail. Kayak, kayak, kayak. corral 'em all over the plain. We rope 'em and brand 'em and doctor their bones and turn 'em out loose on the range. At night when the doggies are dreaming about cow herding just over the way, the night riders sit in their saddles and sing, dark till the dawn of the day. Kaya, 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 when St. Peter calls us to come to his range and punch the wild cattle up there, I hope all the boys who have rode the long range will come when he gives them the dare. I want a good horse who can run a fast race, a crew that don't care where we go. We'll ride away off to some desolate place and sing K-A-P-I-O. Kaya, K-A-P-I-O. Kaya, K-A-P-I-O. Kaya, K-A-P-I-O.
What an amazing song.
It's a great song.
Oh my goodness.
When St. Peter calls us to come to his range and punch the wild cattle up there.
It's fantastic.
It's a good old song.
How did you learn that song?
I did some deep diving on Jimmy, and then I grew up with Kathy Barton, the banjo player, and lived with Dave Para, her husband, at the coffee house that I mentioned.
Wow.
And so we all, and Kathy went down to Mountain View a lot. So she said, "Got this great song." So I went
It
down
is
and
a great song.
yeah, it's a great song.
Would you mind singing one of yours, Chris?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Can I play your guitar there, Joe?
You may.
Josephus?
Yes, sir. I have a
What?
capo.
You do have a keeper, don't
I
you?
do.
I mean, there's two other genres that I guess you could say are really prevalent in the Ozarks, country and bluegrass.
Mm-hmm.
What made you guys go kind of the old time route instead of those two?
Well, first of all, I played bluegrass a long, long time.
Really?
So I wouldn't say that I haven't taken a pretty deep plunge into that. You know, I love all the classic, bluegrass singers, Lester Flatt, Jimmy Martin, and the Stanley Brothers, and Monroe.
What you playing?
I'm gonna do a little something from Max.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought you were going to do one of yours.
Well, she did ask that, but I thought
Whatever you guys want to do.
No.
What is the difference between bluegrass and old time in your own definition?
Well, I do think that bluegrass as a genre was formulated by Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys. I mean, when he made the Bluegrass Boys, that defined a really a composition of a band, of a musical ensemble, and what Monroe brought to the music himself as a real tour de force, really defined music. And I'd say also importantly that a lot of people I think miss is what those early bluegrass bands that even the Stanley Brothers didn't really even use that term for themselves for a while, but it was their songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a canon of songs that was from Monroe and from Lester Flatt and Carter Stanley that to me defines music. You know, I mean, it's grown from that now. We have other new songwriters, what have you. But I think that's really what both the composition of the band and that body of material that has been embraced in a larger community now. Because they took, I mean, it was meant to be a performance music, but they were all country musicians. You know, they all came out of country music and traditional rural musical forms.
Mm-hmm.
So
Stylistically, for me, old time music goes all as a piece. Everyone plays at the same time. Breaks, you don't take breaks as much.
Mm.
Bluegrass is as close to jazz as any form of country music, with the improvisation and with the trading of solos and the trading of breaks. I started playing the music that my family liked, and then I fell in with a bunch of folks who played old time music. But I always loved bluegrass. Then I started. I've always written, and I started writing, and I got songs cut by a bunch of bluegrass artists, and so.
Wow.
You know, and I figure, and I don't want to speak for Chris, but I for me, I'm at the place in my life that I sort of play what I want,
Yeah.
and I play what I like, and sometimes it falls on the bluegrass side, sometimes it falls on the old time side, sometimes it's square. You know, I lived through the folk scare of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
So, you know, so, but it's just, and one of the songs that I wrote with the Gibson brothers, with Eric Gibson, was they called it music. And I was talking to an older fella in Galax, and I said, so when you were a kid, did you call it old time? Did you call it bluegrass? Did you call it country? And he looked at me like I had a third head. And he said, son, we called it music. So that's how I approach it.
Wow. That brings a whole new perspective for me to that song. It's amazing.
You know that song?
I do.
Oh, darn.
Yeah. I haven't listened to it in a long, long time, but heard it at festivals
It
when
worked
I was
out
a
good
kiddo.
for us. It worked out good for us.
Yeah, certainly.
well, I just thought, because we brought up Max Hunter, I thought I should do something for Max.
That sounds
And it's
phenomenal.
truly an Ozark origin song. So it's one he's well known for. Pea Ridge.
Okay. Can I pick on?
You certainly can. I want you to be there. Be there for me.
I thought about learning a second part to this in the banjo. It's so much fun to play on the banjo that I just get all slack-jawed, and that's all I want to do.
Right.
It was on March the 7th in the year of 62. We had a sore engagement with Abe Lincoln's crew. Van Dorn was our commander, as you remember. He lost 10,000 of our men near the Indian Territory. Camp Rice came riding up the line, his horse was in a pace. And as he said the words retreat, the tears rolled down his face. 10,000 less, I'd rather die as they should gain the field. For that he got a fatal shot which caused him to bleed. Springfield and Carthage, many a hero fell. Lexington and Drywood, as near the truth can tell. Such an awful carnage as did I ever see. It happened Let's try and form an order, retreat the best we can. The word retreat was passed around, it raised a heathen cry. Helter-skelter through the woods like lost sheep, they did fly. It was on March the 7th in the year of 62. We had a sore engagement with Abe Lincoln's crew. Bandorn was our commander, as you remember. We lost 1,000 of our men near the Indian Territory.
What a great song.
Amazing.
It's a good.
God, I mean this. It's so perfect. I mean, and maybe that's what I've got a lot to learn about music. But one thing I have learned is if something is near perfect, like his singing on that song, don't get in the way of it. Don't mess with it. It's just so good.
It is. Fantastic. Do you find a big difference in the reception of your music, perhaps in international places that you've played or different regions? I know you've played out west.
That's a really interesting question. I have played, I lived in Italy with my wife for a while,
Cool.
and so I've spent quite a bit of time playing in Europe. But I wasn't always doing this kind of music.
Yeah.
But I did some, and I think that ultimately, I just have always, again, approached it just as a musician. And I always remember one time I got asked, there was a promoter over there who wanted to put together this kind of fiddle gathering, and I don't like to play solo usually. I mean, I try to avoid it at all costs. But I happened to be over there, and he'd gotten hold of me and said, "Chris, I'd like you to come up here to Verona and do this fiddle thing. I'm going to bring this Irish fiddler, and I'm going to bring these violinists that do Bartok stuff that was influenced by traditional melodies and well, I got there and the Irish guy didn't show up."
Oh no!
And so and there was these two guys standing there in tuxedos and playing, this classical stuff, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just dying, And it was it was out in this beautiful, this villa, and all these people were decked out and in their finest, and they played first, and they were wonderful players, but they didn't say a thing to the audience. And I thought, okay, this is how I'm going to win this thing. and I got there. It was my turn, and I spoke some Italian, so I mean I could converse, but I'm sure I still had a pretty heavy accent probably in my Italian. But I talked and I played fiddle tunes, and they thought it was great, So I just think that's just kind of the way you go about playing. You just do your thing, and people see that.
I've found that country people everywhere like country music.
Really?
Overseas, I was playing a Prairie Home Companion cruise, and one of the things about playing the cruise is the people who work on the cruise ships on Holland American Line, they're all either Indonesian or from Java or from the Philippines.
Really?
And so I'm sitting drinking coffee. I did not like them to bring my breakfast in bed. I couldn't put up with that. So I would go out and I'd drink my coffee, and there was a steward, and he comes up to me and he goes, "You are one of the musicians." I said, "I am." He goes, "I am a musician." I said, wow, how late did you stay up playing last night? He said, 2. I said, what time did you have to get up for work? He said, 5. I said, oh, you're a musician.
Right.
And he was, while we were talking, he was surfing people around, and I said, well, maybe we'll play sometime. Maybe we'll sing together sometime. And so about 2 minutes later, he came up and he went, almost heaven, West Virginia. And we sang the whole of Country Roads.
You're kidding.
It was, I'll never forget it.
Oh my word.
I hear her voice in the morning, out she calls me.
Oh my word.
But in America,
It speaks to everybody.
it does. Well,
yeah.
you know, unless your people came and landed in New York and didn't move around, for a lot of people in our country, they're maybe 2 generations removed from the farm,
Right.
if that.
Mm-hmm.
And it resonates with people. And people, you know, you hear Chris Brashear sing that old Pea Ridge, it's like, how can you not like it?
Right.
You really, it's a really great,
It is really great.
yeah,
Can we sing another one?
sure.
That would be fantastic.
I wouldn't mind hearing you sing The Lost Soldier Son,
Okay.
and I'll just sort of
Yeah.
hoot around on the banjo. You play this in F.
I'll do it in F if my voice is get up there. So this is a Ozarks song, if there ever was one, because it was about a member of my family, my mom's older brother, one of her 2 older brothers that lived down in McDonald County, born and raised in Pineville, went off to World War II, and Carl Jr. did not come back. So that was a story of, you know, heavy importance in the family. So this is that story. Our family is proud of their lost soldier son, not because they believe in a flag or a gun. They miss him because they remember him well, and love him so dearly for the day that he fell. And all I knew was the pictures and stories they told about young Carl Jr., that good-hearted boy. We had a connection, I'll tell it to you. He liked the good music now, just like I do. I see a kind face staring down from the wall every time that I pass through my grandparents' hall. It's almost reflection, his face so like mine. My Uncle Carl Jr. now in the grave line. My mother remembers the day that she heard, and as she learned of her brother, she spoke not a word. A small yellow paper received on that day, it read, killed in action in France far away. They still love him dearly, it all seems so sad. Grandmother, grandfather, my mother and dad, they cherish the last things he won from afar. That one white silver star. Now nothing can bring the boy back to the fold. His precious memory ever lovingly hold. When the music is playing and we're all gathered there, our spirits rekindle, no more to despair. Our family is proud of their lost soldier son, not because they believe in the flag or gun. They miss him because they remember him well, and loved him so dearly for the day that he fell, and loved him so dearly for the day that he fell.
What a good
And that gets
song.
me every time.
Yeah, another song that unfortunately a lot can relate to.
Yeah.
Man. Mhm.
Well, it's true. If you don't feel it, don't sing it.
Right.
And
right.
so, man,
Yeah, that's a great song.
Thank you. He was a real Ozarker.
Right.
Yep.
And that's an experience that a lot of Ozarkers had is. I have one question that I'm trying to think of how to phrase.
Uh-oh. Okay.
There's a lot of traditions that have characterized Ozark music that are similar to other regions like Appalachia. Square dancing and ballad singing are two that you don't see very much anymore. And I'm sure there's others. Square dancing is kind of having a revival.
It is. It is.
Why do you think that is?
Why do we think that there's
Why
a
do you
revival
think,
or square dancing
No.
is sort of fallen away?
It seems like traditions, like old time music, just in general, have lasted. Listening to old time music at Silver Dollar City or Mountain View. I personally just haven't seen as much, ballad singing as a tradition carried on, or square dancing as a tradition carried on.
Ballad singing, where I mean, that's what my family did, and I remember going on the first car trip I ever went with another family, and I thought, well, when do we start singing? And they didn't.
Wow.
Mr. Mall just played the radio. But as far as square dancing, I believe that fourth grade square dancing in PE ruined square dancing for a lot of people my age. Because you had to, it's like, oh my God, you mean we have to dance with girls? It was, and then when I was an adult, I realized how much fun it is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, to think about ballad singing, I think there's a certain kind of stereotype of what we think of ballad singing and what it is and who does it, and to me, ballads are story songs that will be with us forever, and we'll keep creating them.
Yeah.
And I think people will always sing, and I think one thing that's really great about like listening to archival collections and field recordings is, when people like Max Hunter went out to people's houses, they were in there working in their kitchen and singing them songs. So I think that it's also I view it as something that's just living. Not everybody's living in the same kind of isolation that we often think about in terms of people that were living in the mountains or out down in the hollers, and not that's certainly how oral tradition has been passed for eons. But But I think it's still there. I think people just don't see it as that.
Yeah.
So that's what I feel in terms of writing songs, and why I feel like, if you're putting yourself in your songs and you're putting your life in your songs, then you're contributing to ballad tradition.
That's a great perspective.
Lots of, I agree. There's lots of story songs.
Yes.
And just because you don't cloak it exactly in the ballad phrasing,
Right.
there's still lots of great story songs.
And I also think it's about, like, people think it's only, a cappella singing.
Right.
Which, that it takes a certain person to be able to do that, and to have a certain ability to convey a song, that makes you, a really great ballad singer, I guess. But I mean, I don't think it's completely confined to that either. I think, you can sing ballads accompanied or unaccompanied. It doesn't have to be in a really solidified kind of presentation,
Right. Yeah, like Tony Rice doing House Carpenter, and then now the Punch Brothers, Chris Thiele, putting it on their album, They transform and carry on.
I every 20 years or so, you'll have some upsurge in interest in this kind of music, and it,
Really?
from it, certainly in the days of the recordings, even from the 20s, you had the Carter Family and Jimmy Rogers and the Big Bang of country music. Then the 40s, the Almanac Singers, and the 50s and 60s, the folk singers and the folk music. And then people discovered the roots music. So people would listen to Doc Watson, and then they'd go on and they'd go on to Roscoe Holcomb. In the early 70s, the Dirt Band Circle album, and then Oh Brother, and now we're seeing Billy Strings.
Right.
And it's very much a continuum.
Yeah.
It's very much a continuum.
Well, I don't think I have any more questions for you all. Do you have anything else you want to discuss?
Oh, gosh.
I know.
I don't know. Did you want to? I guess we should say something about the Smithsonian Folklife Festival.
That would be
that is,
fantastic.
Regional, focused on the Ozarks this year, and there'll be people here from Springfield area, and Joe and I are kind of represent more of the diasporic piece of at least one slice of that. People who grew up here but didn't really stay here for some of their adult life, but still is really connected here. And I think there was something about the theme of the Folklife Festival about, in-migration, out-migration, and how that plays, historically and culturally. And so I would invite people to come to the Smithsonian Folklife Festival.
Fantastic. Would you all mind playing a couple more before we leave?
Sure. Should we fill up a storm here?
We could fiddle up a storm.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
We could play the Arkansas Traveler.
We could do that number.
It's a good number. It's a powerful number. Yes.
What were kind of some of the hubs of old time music when you guys were growing up in the Ozarks, would you say? I know we talked a little bit about McClurg, you said.
Yeah, I talked about the Shack in Ozark Saturday nights.
Ava and those square dances.
Oh, yes.
Bob Hope.
Yeah, I mean,
Amazing
Silver Dollar
story.
City had had their annual music festival, and that's where I met Violet Hensley, and there's a lot of good musicians in the area, and I was influenced by the more traditional artists, but also people like Dudley Murphy, and a wonderful musician who just passed away this past year, and a lot of good bluegrass players, and there's always been acoustic music around. So, it was all there when I was growing up. I mean, I was one of the kids that really didn't. I mean, I liked to do it, and a lot of I didn't have a lot of friends my own age that played, you know.
Right.
But that's just the way it goes sometimes. But I liked hanging around with people that were older than me anyway, and it kept me out of trouble, I guess. Perfectly slightly out of tune.
That's right. We were talking about this the other night, and I back in the day, Missouri had a fiddle contest I'm sure it still does, every weekend
Yes.
between April and November somewhere. And at all of them, there would be some guy, the MC, with a big hat like this, and at the end he'd say, "Well, there are no losers. Everybody's a winner here. Let's play one that we all play. Let's play Liberty." And everybody would be slightly out of tune to each other. And it was just like the musical Tower of Babel. It was just, oh.
Oh, man.
Let's leave her with the Shamus O'Brien.
Yes. Yes, please.
Yeah,
Tribute
that's
to Art Galbraith.
Oh, great.
You know, Mr. Galbraith's dad courted my grandmother for a while.
What?
Before she met this handsome young preacher named Sterling Newberry. But they're the Galbraith land backed up to my family's land on the James.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It is so interesting how you both have known so many
We've lived long enough.
of the...
We've lived long enough to know and see some people.
Yeah, I'd say that is another tradition, is fiddle contest that's not as common
Yeah.
at all in the Missouri Ozarks anymore.
You can bring it back.
Amen.
This is the Shamus O'Brien. I've heard Art play this many times. And our friend Kim Lansford lives down in Galena. She does a wonderful job singing this song, and one of the few people I've ever heard sing it. Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so much for meeting with me today. It's been such a joy.
Yes, ma'am.
And this has been another edition of Songs of the Ozarks. Thanks everybody for watching.